It's the final day of Lost Caverns of Ixalan spoilers, but we still got a couple of rares and some really sweet uncommons to talk about, so let's break them down. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for one final daily dose of Lost Caverns of Ixalan spoilers. So officially, we get the full set drop tomorrow, but as of today, we got all the rares, all the mythics, so tomorrow I guess probably just some random draft shaft uncommons, but we still have a couple of rares to talk about, some really powerful lower rarity stuff, which means we should probably jump right into it, start dogging sweet new cards. Before we do, some quick reminders. First, if you need any of these cards, you can snag them from our sponsor Card Kingdom over at cardkingdom.com/MTGGoldfish. Second, to see the full set drop tomorrow and all the rest of the spoilers, you should head on over to mtgpreviews.com. And third, even though we're at the end of spoiler season, we're not done with Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Next Thursday's early access day, we'll be checking out the set live on twitch.tv/mtggoldfish. And then of course, once the set drops, we'll have tons of gameplay content and other stuff, so that'll be coming in the future. Anyway, let's talk one last time about Lost Caverns of Ixalan. So first up today, we got our final two rares from the set, starting with Anim Pakal Thousandth Moon. So Anim Pakal, 3 mana 1/2, it's a Boros human soldier legend. It says whenever you attack with one or more non-gnome creatures, put a +1/+1 counter on it, then create X 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens that are tapped and attacking where X is the number of counters on it. So this card compares to 2 3-drops that we've seen in the not super distant past. Easiest comparison, very reminiscent of Krenko Tin Street Kingpin. Same mana value, same stats, similar ability. There's a twist here. Krenko needs to attack itself to start getting counters and making tokens. Anim Pakal doesn't care. It's actually formatted more like Ixalan in the sense that you can play a 2-drop on turn 2, play Anim Pakal, attack with a 2-drop, trigger Anim Pakal, start making tokens just like Ixalan does. Anim Pakal just cares about anything attacking, not itself attacking. There's a downside here. Krenko cares about power, so it works with pump spells. If you giant growth Krenko, you make a bunch of tokens at once. Anim Pakal cares about the number of +1/+1 counters on it, so it's a lot harder to like do some pump spell shenanigans to make a ton of tokens all in one attack, although I guess you could if you can add +1/+1 counters to it. Ixalan's other comparison, compared to Ixalan, the ability is almost exactly the same. The downside of Anim Pakal is it starts with much smaller stats. It comes in as a 1/2, first attack becomes a 2/3, second attack a 3/4, third attack a 4/5, so you're looking at 2 or 3 turns of sticky on the battlefield to get as much power as Ixalan, and you might actually never get there. Ixalan gets really big really quick, but there is an upside here. Ixalan only ever makes a single token. Anim Pakal can be making a bunch of tokens. Every counter on it is another token, so it does snowball itself every turn it's on the battlefield. So I actually think this card is pretty standard playable. So my first thought was, seems perfect for the like Boros, Convoke, Celebration token style deck. We've seen this deck be like semi-popular in standard, but it's all about just being like super aggro, flooding the board. Anim Pakal seems like the perfect 3-drop for the deck. Its token can trigger Celebration, it's flooding the board, exactly what you want to be doing in the Convoke deck. The other possibility is just playing this alongside Ixalan, maybe in a human shell, where you're like, have 2 of these 3-drops, they're gonna make a ton of tokens, you got Coppercoat Vanguard, you got Jarina, you got a lot of pieces for some sort of like Mardu human aggro deck. This could certainly have a role there as well. Of course it is legendary, and I don't think it's Ixalan good. Ixalan just gets so much power so fast, it's a must-kill threat. Anim Pakal snowballs much slower than Ixalan as far as its own power, so maybe you're playing like 1 or 2 of them, but I do think this is a playable card. The other place that this could be good is in a Winota deck. I don't think this is going to make it in like modern Winota or anything like that, but if you're playing Winota in Commander, it seems like a cool addition to the deck. Anim Pakal's one of those cards that's a human that makes non-humans, which is kind of exactly what Winota wants, so it seems like a nice addition there as well. So Anim Pakal, I don't think the card's busted or anything, but it does seem like a solid enough card that compares to a couple of pretty playable 3-drops in the not super distant past, so I would be surprised if it didn't show up in standard in some amount. Maybe it's a 1 or a 2 of, but still a nice little 3-drop that can get pretty aggro with its gnomes. Our last rare from the set is a new white reanimation spell in Abuelo's Awakening. So 4 mana plus X for a white sorcery says return target artifact or non-orange emmet from your graveyard to the battlefield with X additional +1/+1 counters on it. It's a 1/1 spirit creature with flying in addition to its other types. So this compares to Repair and Recharge, Campus Renovation. We have several spells in Standard right now that can reanimate artifacts or enchantments. The upside of Abuelo's Awakening is it is cheaper. Its base rate is only 4 mana. If you got more mana, you can dump it into it and get more counters on your thing. But it does come with a downside. It reanimates the thing in creature form, which means it dies to creature removal. So I think in general, I would probably rather just play Repair and Recharge. Like, think about Portal to Phyrexia or Omniscience, these huge artifacts or enchantments you could want to reanimate. You don't really want your Omniscience to be a 1/1 creature, because then it dies to everything. Same with Portal to Phyrexia. You would rather have them enchantment form or artifact form, because it's much harder to kill. So I think in general, if I'm trying to reanimate these things, I would just stick with Repair and Recharge, Campus Renovation, even though they're 1 mana more expensive. That said, there is a very narrow set of circumstances where reanimating an artifact in creature form is actually a big upside, and that's if the artifact's already a creature and that creature cares about +1/+1 counters. We have in Standard right now Threefold Thunderhawk coming soon with Lost Caverns of Ixalan. This is a massive artifact creature that specifically cares about the number of counters on it. So this is like built to reanimate Threefold Thunderhawk. In older formats like Pentavias, Triskelion, Suncrusher, these big artifact creatures that want a ton of counters on them, Abuelo's Awakenings is really good to reanimate those, because not only do you get to a discount compared to other artifact reanimation effects, but you can also dump all your mana into it and add a ton of counters to these things, which is really, really powerful. So Abuelo's Awakening, it's fine. Honestly, I don't know. The fact that it turns artifact or enchantment into a creature makes me very skeptical that this will see play in most decks, even decks that want to reanimate an artifact or a non-or enchantment. But there are those circumstances, like reanimating that Threefold Thunderhawk, where Abuelo's Awakening is going to be really, really sweet. So my guess is this is mostly a card designed for like flavor and for limited, but you never know, it could have some constructed ramifications as well. Moving on to lower rarity cards, we got a few worth mentioning individually. Orazca Puzzle-Door, 1 mana blue artifact, pay 1, tap it, sack it. Look at the top 2 cards of your library, put 1 in your hand, the other in the graveyard. This kind of compares to Mishra's Research Desk, which is a card I played way more than I would have expected. Just being an artifact that sacks and generates card advantage, filters, fill your graveyard, in a deck that's trying to descend or has artifact sack synergies, this could be a pretty reasonable option. We also got Malicious Eclipse, which kind of highlights some of the oddity of Standard not rotating this year. So Malicious Eclipse, 3 mana black sorcery, all creatures get -2/-2 until turn. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. This is pretty much Malicious Malfunction, a Kamigawa card. My guess is Wizards designed Malicious Eclipse to replace Malicious Malfunction when it rotated, but it turns out there was no rotation, so now we get both of them. Malicious Malfunction sees the fringiest of plays. I've seen it a couple of times since it was printed in Kamigawa, although it is worth mentioning that technically Malicious Eclipse is strictly better. Malicious Malfunction exiles any creature that would die this turn. Malicious Eclipse only exiles your opponent's creature, so if somehow you're like a black deck with recursive threats like Tenacious Underdog that wants this -2/-2 effect, Malicious Eclipse is a little bit better than Malicious Malfunction. We also got Bitter Triumph, which I think might actually be a pretty good card. 2 mana black instant, says an additional cost to cast it, discard a card or pay 3 life, destroy target creature or planeswalker. So this is a really efficient way to kill a creature or planeswalker. A 2 mana instant speed is a really, really good rate, and the cost is not meaningfully high. Like in some decks, discarding cards going to be an upside. Worst case, 3 life is not a huge amount. It reminds me a little bit of Bone Shards. Bone Shards is just this random Modern Horizons 2 common that has actually been a very, very strong effect in Reanimator decks, other graveyard-based decks. 1 mana sorcery speed, additional cost to cast this card, sack a creature, discard a card, destroy target creature or planeswalker. Bitter Triumph to me feels like a very, very similar effect for Standard. So if you're a deck that doesn't mind discarding cards, I think this is a pretty good removal option. Isn't going to replace like Go for the Throat or whatever. Not in general, but in some decks I think it might. In some decks where discarding a card is an upside, or you gain so much life, 3 life doesn't matter, then being able to snag a planeswalker along with killing any creature for 2 mana and instant speed is actually a really good deal. So if you're trying to like churn over your Brass's Tunnel Grinder, maybe you're trying to reanimate a Troxa, in a deck like that, not, then this might actually just be better go for the throat. We also got Fanatical Offering, 2 mana black instant. Is an additional cost to cast it, sack an artifact or creature, draw 2 cards, and create a map token. So this is almost Deadly Dispute. Deadly Dispute has proven to be a surprisingly strong card. Seen play back outside of Standard, even in sack decks. Deadly Dispute, I think, is slightly better. I think a treasure token in a vacuum is better than a map token, but Fanatical Offering does most of what Deadly Dispute wants to do. And if you think about part of what makes Deadly Dispute powerful is you're leaving an artifact on the battlefield that then you can sack again to future effects. Your Oni called Anvil, another Deadly Dispute. Fanatical Offering does the same thing. Like, if you're just going to sack the map token to your Oni called Anvil, it doesn't really matter if it's a treasure or a map. It's just an artifact on the battlefield. So I think Fanatical Offering, actually a very good effect for various sacrifice decks that should see a lot of play in Standard and maybe even outside of Standard. We also got Skipping Explorer, which is worth mentioning just because of the cave deck. So 4 mana 3/2, when it ATBs, search your library for a basic land or cave, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So this is like Cave Solemn, essentially. You don't get the card draw when it dies, unfortunately, but if you're a deck that is really all in on the cave plan, this is a way you can snag your Echoing Deeps and copy some busted land in the graveyard. You can snag your Forgotten Monument to make your mana perfect. You can just snag one of the Discover lands for value. So in a cave deck, 4 mana 3/2 that ramps a land could be good enough to see play. We also got a 2-drop dinosaur whose name I am going to butcher. Itzquinth, Firstborn of Gishath. So it's a Gruul 2/3 legendary dino. It is haste, so 2 mana 2/3 haste, not bad stats. Good with Bard class, probably. When it ETBs, you can pay 2 when you do. Target dinosaur you control deals damage equal to its power to another target creature. So Bard class aside, this seems like a pretty solid 2-drop for dinosaur decks. I don't know how many you play because it is legendary, but a 2 mana 2/3 with haste, fine starting point. And then as you play your big dinosaurs, your Pugnacious Hammer Skulls and Trumpeting Carnosaurs and Italies, this is just letting you snipe down your opponent's creatures. And it's not even fighting, like this is biting. Your creatures are not taking damage from this. So I could see this being very strong. Like your dinosaur deck wants as many dinosaurs as possible. This is a dinosaur that's also removable. Between this and Trumpeting Carnosaur, it's seeming more and more possible that your dinosaur deck maybe can eschew instants and sorceries altogether and just trust that your dinos themselves are going to work like removal. So I actually think this could be one of those nuts and bolts cards for standard dinosaurs that hold it together, plus Bard class in older formats, plus dinos or fight decks and Commander as well. Of course, we also got some random commons and uncommons to fill out, limited, but you can find those all over at MTGPreviews.com. And anyway, that brings us to the end, not just of today's daily spoiler, but of Lost Caverns of Ixalan spoilers all together. So now that we've seen all the rares and mythics from the set, we'll get the rest of the commons tomorrow. I probably won't do a video tomorrow because I don't know what we're going to talk about. It's just going to be the few last commons being dumped. But you can find them all on MTG Previews after they dump the rest of the set. But now that we've seen the set, what do you think? Let me know in the comments your opinions on this set. I gotta say, I think this is going to go down as the set of the year. I said this at the beginning of spoiler season. Now that we've seen the whole set, I'm going to say it again. So this set to me, the flavor's good, the art is good, the reprints are absurd. This is the best standard legal reprint set that we've had in decades, probably. Like, you don't usually get Gishaths and Caverns and Growing Rights of Ixalan, like all these Resplendent Angel, all these $20, $30, $50 cards being reprinted in a high supply standard legal set. So great reprint set, and the set itself just looks really powerful and really fun. I think maybe it's not quite as strong as Kamigawa. I would say Kamigawa is the strongest set in standard, but first impression is this is close to Kamigawa, probably second most powerful set in standard. But I want to know what you think of this set. Definitely let me know in the comments. And even though we're done with spoiler season, there'll still be a ton more Lost Caverns of Ixalan to come. Next Thursday's the early access day, so we'll get to check out the new set early. And then once the set drops, of course, tons of gameplay videos, all that stuff. So thanks for watching this spoiler season, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. And I will be back in, I guess, a month or two with some Ravnica Remastered spoilers. So until then, have a lovely day, and I will talk to you soon. Looking for even more magic? Well, you can find yesterday's daily spoiler video right here, or check out the Against the Odds, where we added literally 1 billion counters to a Gruff Triplets.